Hello and welcome to another episode of Cavell Cloud Conversations. I'm Finbarr Begley. Patrick can't be here right now, but you've got me, which is all very good. And I'm joined by Lee Hamilton from Dstny. Why don't you introduce yourself, Lee? Let everyone know who you are and where you're from.
So I'm Lee Hamilton, of course, as Finbarr said, head of product marketing here at Dstny for service providers, but also responsible for the marketing part. So been in business for about 3 years and actually came with the acquisition of Call to Teams way back when it was Qunify. So started Dstny Group last January as head of product marketing.
Brilliant. Absolutely. And you were obviously in attendance at our recent Cavell North America Summit. It was a really exciting time. And I know that Mark Herbert from Dstny, he gave a really good keynote about FMC 3.0. First, tell people a little bit about the event. Did you have a good time? I think it was, one of your big launches in the US, just talking about exciting moves in the market. So
yeah, for sure. I think this was, as you said, this is the first event that we've had in the US. We've had many in Europe, but not necessarily in the US. So I think this is a great opportunity on two parts, really. One is to push kind of who we are to new customers. And I think the people that attended Cavell were the right people to be talking to. So had a great engagement and great conversations with a number of people, and obviously then the existing customers that we have as well, which I think is just important. I think as time goes on, I think the more the face to face will come back. But having that time to kind of talk and chat with people face to face and just talk about either kind of new features, new capabilities, new products that we're looking to launch, or just kind of chew the fat on some of the things that I think need to be done, but obviously better face to face. So all in all, a really, really good event from our perspective.
And I think it's an interesting proposition because we see a lot of companies moving from the US into Europe with new technologies and things like that. Less companies manage to make that journey from Europe to the US. So why is Dstny sort of embracing that choice, and what are you bringing to the US market?
It's a really good question. So I think if you think of kind of where we come from, I think a lot of the stuff is around kind of Call to Teams. So, we've got a really good presence within the US market with a kind of market lead and direct routing solution. And then once the acquisition has obviously been made, then you kind of broadens you a little bit within the kind of the portfolio of solutions that we have within the business. We have a fantastic UCaaS solution. Which, if you kind of look at the kind of the carrier elements, the kind of tier ones, tier twos, etc., there's a really good opportunity actually to kind of leverage the real unique capabilities that we do have within the solution set. And they can apply it to the US markets as well. So it's a proven solution within Europe. But, as any business wants to do, you broaden our horizons, extend that kind of addressable market. And the US for us is really exciting for sure.
Brilliant. Absolutely. So let's bring back into the discussion about what was presented at the show, where you focused on FMC 3.0. I think that was the tagline. Why don't you break down a little bit what you mean by that?
So obviously three evolutions of FMC, so FMC as a concept's been around for a long time. But we feel FMC 3.0 is a real kind of point in time where you have the technological capability within the mobile devices, so eSIMs, etc., and bits and pieces. You've got the mobile infrastructure, which is solid. That's in place as well now. And then you have the UCaaSs, which, some people are now saying it's becoming slightly commoditized, etc. So this is a great opportunity to kind of broaden the opportunities within that. But the capabilities and the features that live within UCaaS, a lot of them lend themselves to mobility. So where you have the carriers on one side, the UCaaS on the other, and the FMC in the middle, there's a huge amount of potential when it comes to native voice for sure.
Yeah, and this is all about bringing that native voice calling experience into a unified cross-platform experience between your fixed phone, your mobile phone, the UCaaS, and creating a unified full experience that brings quality across the entire platform. Voice is an interesting discussion, and I know before we jumped on to record, we were talking a bit about voice. Some people would argue that voice is on the way out, right? I mean, the kids are texting all the time. Everyone wants chatbots and automation and all that kind of stuff. But obviously, Dstny doesn't believe that voice is dead. So what's keeping voice around?
I think Steve Jobs, way back when the phone app was the iPhone was invented, which was the kind of voice is kind of the killer app, and that was kind of a real kind of point of Mark's keynote. Voice is still really, really important. It's everything that we do informally within meetings, kind of face to face. Voice is the kind of the primary source of communication. You know, if we would turn our video off now, we could still hear each other because we're communicating via voice. And I think with the rise of UCaaS, video conferencing, text, as you said, SMS, WhatsApp, bits and pieces, and then you've got other things coming along, and AI, I think voice has been forgotten about, and I think it's just maybe kind of taken advantage of a little bit in my eyes, in terms of it's just a standard thing that happens, and no one really kind of invests kind of effort and energy into it. But I think now is a real opportunity. So with FMC in a place where it is, but also, you know, if you take the AI example, there are so many use cases in which you can kind of apply the kind of UCaaS AI, you know, whatever UCaaS platform it is, and really kind of bring some value to voice conversations. And there are a ton of use cases, you know, that you can kind of, that comes top of mind when it comes to that. So, you know, take frontline workers, for example. District nurse, you know, he or she will, you know, be going out day to day, 8 or 9 hours a day on the road, making calls. We're in the hospital, calling patients, calling colleagues, etc. No one has time to do the administration tasks. We're quite lucky. We sit at a desk. Once we're off a call, we can kind of do what we need to do. But these guys are kind of in the field. They're in the thick of it. And so they need to be leveraging technology where they can to really make their days easier. And for FMC, that is a real good use case. You know, kind of call transcription, kind of summarization, and everything else that kind of comes with it. So when it comes to the end of the day, the admin is done and there's less time on it, so it doesn't eat into their evenings, and it becomes a rinse and repeat. But yeah, this is where I see kind of one of the key use cases for the technology, for sure.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting because, as you say, you know, analyst in my office, you know, product manager, etc., sitting there at your desk, you have that transcription box that pops up on the side. You can have a look at it. You have your co-pilot summarizing it for you in real time, and you're happy to jump on a camera because you've got a good camera, you're stationary, there's no other environmental factors. You know, for us, video seems to make a lot of sense, and why wouldn't we? And it's kind of weird if you don't have video on. But there's lots of people in the world who don't have good quality video. They don't have a strong enough connection. There's lots of things, and ultimately those people need to benefit from the same sorts of technologies that we're benefiting from as well. We can't just leave them in the dust to be stuck, you know, 10 years ago. We need to bring them up to speed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I think frontline workers are, you know, in most geographies, the backbone of a lot of industries, really. I think, you know, the office work, yes, is it, but I think they kind of have been, I would say forgotten about, probably the wrong terminology, but, you know, it's something that hasn't necessarily been developed for them. I think with FMC, they're definitely kind of at the forefront of thinking, really. So yeah, I think it's a great place to be. And I think with, you know, like I said at the beginning, I think the key thing is to make sure that we do it in such a way where it's understood and it's kind of culturally adopted. That's the kind of the barrier to entry, I feel. So, you know, take it from the Nordics, where it's very strong, it's entrenched, through to kind of the US market. It's a case of, well, you know, why would I want to do that? And I think there's obviously some nervousness around it as well, especially when you come to kind of bring your own device, which is kind of a key element to FMC if businesses want to leverage it.
Why don't we slow down a little bit and just unpack that idea a little bit more? So what cultural challenges are we talking about, and why do you think they're making people nervous?
Well, it's a funny one. So, you know, we're all used to the native dialer, right? We make a phone call to our mum, our dad, brother, sister, whoever it is, kind of nice and easy. But when you talk about it in the business sense, it becomes a bit more like, oh, okay, well, you know, what do I need to be doing here? And if you talk about kind of dual SIM and bits and pieces, what would I be calling them off my personal number? Or my personal number is exposed to people that I don't necessarily want exposed to, because this is a business call. It's getting over those things. And if you think about you know, how businesses address this today, it's very simple. It's just give you two mobiles, which is always
absolutely
business line, personal line, and then therefore there's a kind of a physical delineation between the two. FMC kind of brings those two together, but I certainly think there's some understanding of what it can deliver, and kind of the dispelling of some myths, I guess, associated with this. And I think that happens over time, for sure.
So you think potentially in the US, they're still very comfortable with the idea that they're going to have two phones for the rest of their life, and that, you know, the idea that they might possibly be combined into one is just something that makes them a bit nervous?
I think so, but it's also, if you think about the other proposition point with FMC, it's around kind of leveraging the carrier network as opposed to kind of the data. So, over the kind of top app thing. I think there's still some confusion around, well, we have a mobile UC. Well, you don't. You're using the over the top app. You're not using kind of the native dialer for your calling. And then the next argument comes, well, we don't need data. We got data everywhere. It's fine. It's easy. But going to New York, as you well know, going through, the high-rise buildings and stuff, your data gets knocked out. Get Google Maps out, it's all over the place. So, these high-rise buildings in built-up areas for sure, but also when you kind of go out to the rural areas where you don't have data, there's certainly a strong argument for leveraging the carrier network. And if you've got that within your UCAS, that kind of covers you off from multiple bases and, improves the ability to be continuously connected, I think, during your working day.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I think that's something comes back to the point we were talking about before, which is you often have knowledge workers, thought leaders who live in cities, near cities. They've obviously paid for the good internet, and they have a different experience to people who actually rely on the carrier network for the majority of their connection, call quality, etc. Now, I grew up in rural Ireland, so I know what happens when the carrier network doesn't work. And the answer is that there's one place in my house where you can get signal, and you have to use a landline because you do not get phone signal on a mobile phone, and you didn't get it until 3 years ago. So if you think about looking backwards in time, and there are tons of rural places and also places in cities that have bad signal as well, where actually the carrier network is a differentiator. And the carriers know that. They keep investing in rural infrastructure to make sure the quality is there as well. So I think that's very important to understand, that it's easy to get distracted by your use case, but you have to think about the broader context as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So how do we make people culturally more comfortable with this then? Just hand them one phone, give them a bit more training? I mean, what's the barrier that we break down to get people using these technologies?
Well, it's as you say, it's getting people to use it. The best way to kind of remove barriers is by people being exposed to a thing, a new capability, a new feature, a new product, because that's ultimately how you get product market fit. But as we well know, if we take a Dstny as an example, as a tech vendor, there are a number of links in the chain to get it to the end user. Now, we're in a fairly advantageous position to some degree because we have our Dstny countries, to which then we can use our technology, and we can kind of push it into the channel directly a little bit more. But with third-party service providers, we're relying on trying to get these guys bought into that idea to then push it to their channel, their direct customers, and then to the end users as well. So this kind of takes time. But I think it's kind of pinpointing the key use cases where we kind of really see value of it, starting there, and then working our way back as well in terms of the value from the user to the business to kind of resellers distribution if they're in there as well, and then through to the kind of the service provider as well. So there's a number of arguments to kind of go over before it's kind of adopted. But the arguments are there for sure. It's just a kind of it's a time thing, I think.
Yeah. Sure. Let's talk about service providers a bit. So what sort of service providers should be listening to this and thinking, hey, maybe I should get in touch with Dstny? What's their business profile that matches with what you can provide?
Well, take tier 1 and tier 2 providers in the US as an example. Now, I think the tier ones have, I guess, a little bit more luxury to some degree, where you can have full IMS integration with a UCAS. So I think it's Verizon and Teams with their kind of Teams Phone Mobile tie-up as well. Fully integrated, it's all in there. You got the belts and whistles with Teams, and kind of away you go. But I think we haven't seen the adoption that perhaps kind of Teams and Verizon wanted, and maybe there's a kind of a few things in there which needs to be unpacked. But for us, in terms of our integration is more lightweight, so you're not necessarily reliant on that full IMS integration, which for us is a real key differentiator. So where you've got maybe the laggard tier ones, or kind of the early adopter tier twos, where they're not necessarily bound to kind of plummeting in a ton of resource, either cost, people, and time into getting something that works. You can turn it around very quickly, and then you can kind of focus on the important thing, which is getting this solution to market, get that product market fit, and then kind of growing on the back of that.
Brilliant. I mean, as you say, you have done this in Europe, and if any service providers in the US are thinking, "Oh, I don't know if this is a good fit for my market. Is it going to fit in with the way we do things around here?" Well, I can tell you the way they do things in France and the Netherlands and Germany is probably much more different than the way they do things between New York and Jersey. So this is a company that has a lot of experience dealing with cross markets and different cultures and those kind of things.
We do, absolutely. I mean, we're very spread. I think Dstny's kind of M&A over the past couple of years has brought with it a ton of experience. I think from, like you said, different geographies, different cultures, and it's the technology thing as well, which for us is critical. Is combining it all together to kind of create the kind of best proposition out there. But if you think from a team's perspective or whatever it is, we've got a very, very strong diet routing. We've got a fantastic product in Converge as well. With Carrot Automate as well. That's another thing. So from that integration side, absolutely rock solid. And then we have our UCaaS solution as well, mainly in Europe again, but completely rock solid as well. So yeah, we're well positioned, I think, to enable service providers to become more differentiated in the market and push that down to their channel and directly to end customers.
Yeah, definitely differentiation is on the mind of service providers in the United States. We're starting to wrap up, I guess. Is there anything else you'd like to let people know? I mean, where can they find you next? Are you going to be at any events soon, or how do they get in touch?
Yeah, so Dstny.com, get in touch, of course. My email, I think, will be kind of on this podcast, so please get in touch and I'll route you to the right person for sure. Events next year, we're still planning those, but definitely will be present at the Cavell events within London and New York for sure. I think it's a fantastic event, well set up, and it's certainly something we want to kind of continue with moving forward.
Brilliant. Well, as he pointed out, the next large Cavell event is in London. That's the Cavell EU Summit. That will be in March. We do have smaller events targeted at enterprises locally in the UK. And we also have an event targeted specifically at enablement of voice and calling in collaboration platforms, which is happening in early December in London as well. So if you're interested in either of those, please do get in touch, as always, on LinkedIn or through any other means. Thank you very much, Lee. I think this has been a really interesting podcast. If you want to learn more about FMC or you want me to connect you to Dstny or Lee, just do get in touch with me on LinkedIn or reach out to them directly.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Cheers.